Hey everybody, welcome to a disaster response episode of the Afghanistan Project podcast. If you have been looking at any of the news involving, evacuation groups and volunteer efforts in the last couple days, you know that everybody's hair is on fire and it's back to August 2021 vibes in a lot of people. But I'm here with somebody who is gonna give us some calm, I'm thinking. Andy Sullivan, the Chief Advocacy Officer at No One Left Behind. You guys know him well. I'm not going to read his whole huge bio because you were here like a month ago talking about what to expect from the Trump administration and giving us some level setting and calming. And that's what I have you here for now, Andy. So thanks for being here. Thanks for taking on this gargantuan effort. And I actually, it's maybe not as gargantuan as I've escalated things to be already. So the floor is yours, Andy. Tell us what's going on from No One Left Behind's perspective, and give us some moments to breathe in.
Yes, Beth. Well, one, I think you've given me a pretty big task, which is if I'm supposed to bring calm, I don't know that I've got that in me right now, because it's certainly a frenetic time, and I know people are worried. I would also say don't go back and listen to my prognostications because I think I'm only about 50-50 from our previous one. I had said I was optimistic about the SIV program, and thankfully, so far, none of the executive orders that have come out have touched it. And in fact, some of the implementing guidance that we've seen has specifically said the Special Immigrant Visa program is going to continue to function. So at least I got that one right, that thus far, SIV is protected and continuing to function. And we've seen on the actual ground with people still continuing to receive COM approvals, continuing to get manifested. Those things are still happening, and we expect that flights will continue with SIVs as well. Anyways, let me back up. And for folks that maybe don't know, I'll kind of give you what we've seen. So after President Trump was sworn in, a series of executive orders have gone out. From our perspective, there are, I believe, almost a dozen or so that cover immigration in some form or fashion. But from our perspective, there were really two that affect us. So the first is one called realigning the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. That's the one that I think has gotten the kind of most coverage, and it's a pause in the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, U.S. RAP program. It's supposed to take effect 27 January. The implementing guidance came out, or at least some initial implementing guidance, I should say, came out and really has effectuated a stop to that program as of yesterday. What is today? Thursday.
It's the 23rd. And we should do what you said before we started recording. Point. You should say that right now. We are recording this.
This is the worst intro I've done with you yet.
I think it's the most fun, actually. Yeah. Let's repurpose that. We're staying optimistic right now, Andy. That's our job.
So right now we are recording this Thursday, January 23rd at 1:15. Everything I'm saying now is subject to change, because I think that's one of the things that we've seen, Beth, is this has been a very fluid situation. We've seen executive orders come down, but executive orders don't spell out everything. And so, implementing guidance will come down, things will change. And it's not to say that, these executive orders are done. There are future ones potentially coming out. There are ones that could, contramand what has already been published and rescind it and restart things. So I say that to say, it's a fluid situation, and anyone that is going to tell you with certainty what is going to happen, tomorrow or a week from now or 2 weeks from now as it relates to our Afghan allies and the immigration pathways here, I'm telling you, they're a charlatan. Don't believe it. We just don't know. So with that initial caveat out of the way, so one of the EOs that came down is this realigning the U.S. RAP program. It was going to pause U.S. RAP as of 27 January. It actually paused it late on Tuesday. Some implementing guidance came out from the Bureau of Populations, Refugee and Migration that paused it effective immediately. And so from what we've seen, those flights have paused and folks are not going to be moving. Now, also within this EO, there is a requirement for it to be paused until an assessment comes down from the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Secretary of State no later than 90 days from now. Once that comes out, they will assess, how U.S. RAP can be restarted And admittedly, if it can be restarted, is going to be their advice in there. And if it can't, then there will be a series of continuing evaluations and reports every 90 days. Additionally, as part of that EO is an exception on a case-by-case basis for folks to continue to be processed via U.S. RAP and to travel via U.S. RAP. That would require sign-off of both Secretary of State, Secretary of Homeland Security. I think it remains to be seen what that looks like, how robust it is, and really how that process is going to function. Some of the things that I know, folks are working on are, the Afghans are a special population. This is not to denigrate other refugees from other countries, but America has a special relationship with Afghanistan. It's the site of our longest war. The overwhelming majority of these refugees are folks that had a very close nexus to the U.S. mission, either fighting alongside our troops as members of the Afghan National Security Forces. Oftentimes, they're folks that were just at the cusp of SIV eligibility but didn't get it for one reason or another. Oftentimes, the majority of times through no fault of their own, where their contract was canceled because we were drawing down and just didn't need the linguist services. Sometimes it was folks that were injured in the course of their service and so didn't meet their 365-day requirement for SIV eligibility. But these are people that served alongside us for 2 decades. So we have a special obligation to them. So I know we're going to be pushing and working with the administration to have broad categorical carve-outs for this special population. In addition to that, I know that we're going to be pushing the administration that if we cannot get those broad categorical carve-outs, we need to have an incredibly robust case-by-case system where we can bring forward, the most dire of situations, so that folks can be, adjudicated and granted exceptions while this pause is ongoing. Those are the things that I know we're going to be working on. Now, I had mentioned that there were 2 EOs that we were, really kind of focusing on. The second one was protecting the U.S. from foreign terrorism and other national security and public safety threats. That's going to be one that involves an assessment of kind of how we're doing vetting in other locations. It doesn't have direct impact right now, but candidly, it's one that I worry, whatever kind of reports that come out from this EO as we look at, our ability to vet could negatively impact SIVs along with other IV cases. Our perspective has always been SIVs are some of the most rigorously vetted human beings on the planet. When they arrive, we can absolutely be guaranteed of their patriotism, their ability to, join the fabric of American society, and to be just incredible members of the community. They're vetted as part of the SIV process, but really the way I like to think about it is SIVs, they're vetted every day that they serve with us. Like, my interpreter, Amadi, he didn't need to be vetted because he served with us for 5 years. Not just with me, but with Marine units, with other Army units. I mean, it was a guy that I would absolutely trust my life with. His vetting occurred every single day. And so, when we talk about SIVs, we know how well they've been vetted, even if now, Afghanistan is under the control of the Taliban. We know, that these folks have served with us and have a long record of, just incredibly faithful service, and they're going to be great great members of American society. So that's one that there's no change right now, but it's certainly something that we're cognizant of moving forward. Some good news, and I'm sorry, Beth, I'm just jumping all over the place.
Nope, that's what I have you here for. You know more than I do. I want you to tell me all the things, and I'm just pretending like I know.
Well, perfect. Well, like I said, this is what I know right now. We'll see what I know and don't know in a day or two. As of right now, we have specifically heard SIV is going to continue to function. I think, as I mentioned, as part of that guidance from PRM that went out to refugee resettlement agencies, SIV holders are exempt from the changes to U.S. RAP. So we anticipate that all of the aspects that go along to the SIV program are going to continue to function with COM determinations, visa issuance, travel, reception, and placement here in the U.S. That's a good thing. And we're absolutely going to fight to protect that and continue that. And I'm very optimistic. We also have seen some really great statements on a bipartisan basis from members of Congress about this. There have been, in the last day or two, really some great statements from, Senator Lindsey Graham, Representative Warren Davidson, Representative Derek Van Orden, himself a veteran, a Navy SEAL. I believe he served in Afghanistan as well. I believe Rep. Luttrell, another Navy SEAL who served in Afghanistan. So, we know that our elected representatives also get this nuance and also get, the need to make sure that we're standing with our Afghan allies. And so we are cautiously optimistic that, they're going to be able to carry that message that SIV needs to be protected, and also we need to make sure that we're having these carve-outs for Afghans just by the special nature of our relationship with them.
Okay, I know I said we're going to be optimistic, but when you were here last, we were talking about the fact that the number of COM approvals that have been issued is basically the same as the number of SIVs that were left.
Yep.
And so it sounds from the things you've already said, like, you're not concerned about being able to get more SIVs under this new Congress. Has your thought changed in the last couple days?
It hasn't. I mean, quite frankly, it hasn't. I am still optimistic there. The facts have not changed. The facts of where we are in getting the legislation across the finish line. I guess let me talk about how many visas are remaining. The Q4, the FY24 Q4 report has come out. I think it was last week. I believe it said there were 13,000 visas remaining. Disregard that. That's there's such latency in the reporting there that figure is no longer correct. It's probably sub 11,000 now for visas authorized and available for issuance. And the last I had seen, I believe it was over 12,000 folks that had their COM approval that, given their COM approval, would be eligible for those visas. So we do have more COM approved than we do visas available. That's a concern. Now, why I'm still optimistic. One, I think this pause has shown for legislators on both sides of the aisle the importance of the SIV program as a pathway for America's most trusted and vetted allies that served by or on behalf of the U.S. So I think there's going to be a lot of motivation to ensure that program continues to function. So that has me feeling good. Also, we have in the Senate's version of the fiscal year 2025 State Foreign Operations Appropriations Act, they've got 20,000 visas in there. And actually, I'm trying to remember if I had briefed this the last time I had seen you, or if it hadn't come out yet, but there was a letter from, I don't think it had come out yet now that I think about it, in the House of Representatives, some of our great allies, many of them veterans, Jason Crow, Zach Nunn, and then two, unfortunately, now departed members of Congress, Earl Blumenauer and Brad Wenstrup. They led a letter encouraging the House of Representatives, members of the House, to include these 20,000 visas as part of the next government funding package. That got 54 total signatures. So we had more than 10% of the House that has already jumped on and said yes. We want more visas. We want the 20,000 visas that are in the Senate bill, as we look at government funding for FY25. So that funding bill, when that would move would likely be middle of March. That's, I think, when we would see action. And I am optimistic that we're going to be able to push that. And so, that's kind of where we are right now with that.
I have one question that keeps coming up from people. I've told Afghans, whatever your questions are, let me know. I'm going to ask them to the experts. And so just for people's awareness, Sean Van Diver and Kate Kavarovic are going to come on at a later date to talk about more U.S. RAP focused things, because you guys do SIV, but this kind of actually impacts both. So I would love your take on it. I believe that CARE was made an official entity prior to the Trump administration coming into office. And I'm not saying that right, so I'm hoping you can finesse my words, but people are concerned that CARE will go away, and CARE helps with the SIV process. Could CARE go away? And what would happen with SIV applicants and their process of getting to the U.S. if CARE did go away?
So I can't remember if we had talked about that. I think it happened after I was on. I have good news for you. CARE has been codified into law. And so the CARE Authorization Act, again, bipartisan legislation, The Republican lead is another veteran, Jim Baird, who's a Vietnam vet and an amputee who knows really well what our local national allies do for us. An incredible human being. He and Rep. Titus from Nevada, they led that legislation. That legislation was signed into law as part of the defense bill. It's good legislation in that it is, not to get too policy wonky here, but in Congress there is may and shall language, and so may language means the president has, can or cannot do it. Like, he has the authority to do it, but if he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to. Shall language is Congress saying, hey, this is really freaking important. You need to do it. You're going to do it. It got in with shall language. And so CARE is authorized by Congress under this stronger shall language for another 3 years. So Congress has said CARE is going to exist, so CARE will exist. Now, that doesn't mean there's not more work to do. I had talked about trying to get additional visas authorized as part of the government funding bill. Well, the government funding bill, we also need to make sure we're funding the State Department and we're funding CARE. And so we'll certainly be pushing to encourage legislators to robustly fund the State Department and robustly fund CARE so that we can continue these really important activities.
Awesome. What are you doing? I mean, I'm just thinking now about the broader implications. If you've got, some people are saying 50 to 60,000 U.S. RAP applicants. Obviously, they're not all in Pakistan, but many SIV applicants are in Pakistan. It's going to be a shifting geopolitical situation if you have a bunch of Afghans traversing back to their country or staying without, there are just a lot of things that are up in the air that could change. And how do you anticipate that could impact your SIV population that No One Left Behind is trying to help right now?
So this is one of those where there is still a lot to be determined, a ton to be determined, because again, it is going to be interesting to see how this is kind of effectuated. So for Afghans that may be on a platform that are now not traveling, that have U.S. RAP referrals, for Afghans that may be in Pakistan and being supported by CARE and by the U.S. government, what happens with them without a clear pathway right now because the U.S. RAP program is paused. That remains to be seen. To what you'd mentioned though with Pakistan, this could not come at kind of a worse time for our allies, given what has happened in Pakistan over, really, I think at this point, nearly a year and a half, with, Pakistani authorities have been really pretty brutal to Afghans. They had announced a plan to deport 1.7 million Afghans. I believe the figure I'd seen was over 400,000 had gone back. That's a mix of deportations and then also self-repatriations because, I think one of the really insidious things that the Pakistani state did was, they really tried to mobilize Pakistani society to make life harder for our Afghan allies, through basically threatening Pakistani nationals with some sort of penalty if they employed Afghans in their businesses, if they allowed Afghans to rent apartments from them. And so, they were kind of deputizing Pakistani society to make life harder for Afghans. And so we saw a lot of these repatriations. That is continuing. And so, we're certainly going to be pushing the State Department that, Embassy Islamabad needs to work with the Pakistani government to, ensure that they're fulfilling their legal obligation for, refugees that are in Pakistan. We also have been pushing for, for Afghans that have COM approval and have a pathway via the Special Immigrant Visa Program before the U.S. RAP program was paused, but Afghans that also have a pathway via the U.S. RAP that, they have letters from the State Department that they can show Pakistani authorities saying, hey, please don't detain, please don't harass me. I have, immigration documentation to, that is forthcoming and I will be leaving. So please, do not harass and detain me. Because, we've had a handful of cases with folks that were manifested to fly and deported by the Pakistani government. Thankfully, that's been only a handful or so that we know of, but I'm sure there are plenty more where folks had pathways to safety in the U.S. and Pakistani authorities deported them anyways. And so that's certainly something we're going to be working with State Department on, are already working with State Department on, is to make sure we are protecting those folks. Because again, Pakistan's just a really tough place for Afghans right now as well.
Yep, I've seen a lot of fleecing now for, it seems like a lot of those arrests that had happened in the last couple weeks were really an attempt to extract even more funds, right, from Afghans who are already in such a dire situation. It's just been, this is what I keep trying to remind people. Like, it's not a happy way to look at this, right? But how many crises have we seen with US RAP?
Yeah.
How many? So many. And this is just another one.
Yep.
And there are more people now who've been doing it who understand it better than they did in the beginning. Like, honestly, we're better equipped for crises now. We've been through this for 3.5 years. We're exhausted, but we know more now and have more allies in our back pockets now. It's just important to, I don't know, I had a question for you and it just fled my brain. Like, gosh, give me a second.
I think this may be a good time to talk about kind of, the refugee program writ large and immigration writ large, because quite frankly, I think a lot of people are drawing the wrong lessons from the election. And I think that can be both folks on the kind of more, pro-immigration across all immigration pathways side, and quite frankly against among immigration hawks. I think the wrong lessons are being learned and the wrong things are being gleaned. So our friends at More in Common did some polling just about U.S. views in the aftermath of the election. And one of the things they found was that immigration was the number 3 top priority. So certainly something really important, beyond the economy, inflation, and healthcare, I believe. So the economy / inflation and then healthcare, I believe, the top 2, with immigration being number 3. So it's a high priority. So anyone that thinks that like Americans aren't concerned about immigration, I think they're wrong. Now, where there's nuance in there is 7 in 10 Americans, and this is across the political divide, 7 in 10 Americans believe there is a crisis at the southern border and that immigration there has gotten out of control. I think we need to recognize that Americans are really concerned about that. We say that, but then here's where the wrong lessons are, I think, being derived, is southern border migration is not the same as U.S. RAP and is certainly not the same as SIV. Because within that same finding that found that 7 in 10 believe southern border migration is a issue, More in Common found that 3 in 5 believe we should have a functioning U.S. RAP system. So, it is a majority position that we should have, U.S. RAP and it should continue to function. That's a majority position. I think even more than that, though, here is really the incredible things. This is among Republicans. 88% of Republicans believe properly controlled immigration is very good for the U.S. And what that means is not no immigration. Like, I think a lot of, some of the folks that have drawn the wrong lesson here is, we need to have no immigration. I don't think that's the lesson to draw at all. I think it's about, a rigorous vetting process that SIV has, that US RAP has, and kind of a control on how folks arrive here. And indeed, I think those programs, SIV and also US RAP, they are truly the pinnacle of what Americans are looking for, and especially in the Afghan context. Folks that are that served Shona B'Shona with Americans for 2 decades and are now incredibly vulnerable because of a despotic regime. But they're we can vet them, we can understand what their situation is in a third country, and then bring them here in an orderly fashion. Like that is what Americans, that is what 88% of Republicans are calling for. And so, to me, I think it's one of those we've unfortunately drawn some of the wrong lessons here as it relates to refugee, and I hope some of that nuance is going to be able to break through, because again, I think it's very much a American prerogative that we want to see this. One of the other ones that stood out, we had a Welcome.us, they hosted a webinar yesterday, and it was really incredible. They've had more than 300,000 people sign up to be welcomers. I mean, there are people, this is people with direct skin in the game that want to do this. Just really incredible support for this. I know one of the other ones, just to give kind of more facts and figures if they're helpful, I think we've referenced this one before, but Our friends at With Honor and Ipsos conducted a poll in late 2023. Across the political spectrum, 88% view Afghans who help the U.S. favorably. 80% said we need to help them resettle. 77% across the political spectrum said not only should we help them resettle, they would be welcome in my community. I mean, think what sort of issues have an 80-20 split in American society today? Incredibly few. So this is one where we know that this is popular. That Ipsos and With Honor one, and I don't know this is as public. I don't actually know that I'm supposed to know this, but I've seen the kind of crosstabs that hadn't gone out in the press releases. You know, when you prime people to tell them like, okay, you know, resettling Afghans is a national security issue, those numbers go up. So that was 80% unprimed. But once you prime them that it's a national security issue that people are vetted, once you prime them to say that American veterans support this and this is a veterans issue, those numbers go up even more. So when we educate people about what this is, you know, the SIV program, US RAP, the P4, you know, private sponsorship, all of those things are immensely popular amongst Americans across the political divide. I really hope that's going to break through because, again, I think people see, you know, kind of large headlines. I know New York Times, The Atlantic, others, you know, said like, hey, immigration is what decided the election. And like, yeah, probably, but not the U.S. RAP program and sure as hell not the SIV program and not, you know, Afghans that fought with American troops for 20 years coming here. That's not what decided the election. And so, you know, I hope that level of nuance is going to break through here, and that we're going to, you know, preserve these incredibly important, you know, the refugee program and SIV program.
I hope that you're right. You know, we made a promise, and that's what there are a couple things I just keep saying. We made this promise, right? And it wasn't just the Biden administration that made that promise. It was every administration that said, if you work with us, we will stand by you. And we didn't stand by the Afghan government. But we need to stand by the people who worked with that government, who supported our military forces, who did everything that we asked of them, and fulfill that promise and not amend it right now and say, well, now here's what we really need. I don't think that looks good for this country. Yeah. I also think that we should be investing. I hope that the Trump administration is strong on the Taliban, because what I would love to see, and what I think so many Afghans who supported us would love to see, is a country without the Taliban. Afghans are not trying to flee here because it is, you know, it's not this, well, this is a better country and we have to go there. It's, we can't go to our home because they will murder us. And yep. Many Afghans want to go back when it is safe to go back, but it's not safe now. And so I think it's really important that we do something about the Taliban. I don't know what that is, but that's kind of an aside.
I mean, from your mouth to God's ears, I didn't enjoy the Taliban in my experiences in Afghanistan.
I'm sure you didn't, and that's the cluster.
I found them to be rude.
Just a bit rude, just a bit, you know, as they were murdering people outside of HKIA.
I found their IEDs pretty obnoxious.
Right? Know? And that's what gets me, is we know who these people are. We know what they're capable of, and there's not much. It's time for a change. I really hope that this is I keep saying this too, it is a bipartisan issue. So many people that I've worked with come from vastly different spectrums, and we all care about Afghans, and that says something about Afghans, and it says something about Americans. So this is really important. I guess as a last question, I would love you to talk about, you know, No One Left Behind doesn't just support SIV applicants who are stuck in Pakistan. In fact, I think that's something that you guys started doing after all of this, right? When it became we need to help people as they wait on this interminable exfiltration process. But you guys help Afghans stateside. What have you seen Afghans stateside do when they've come here and been able to resettle and find safety after supporting us for so many years?
I mean, it's truly incredible, and especially for SIVs, because they come here with often, you know, with language skills and certainly with like the cultural fluency that I think, you know, other recently arrived, you know, folks don't necessarily do. And so their ability to immediately like join the fabric of American life and make incredible impact in their communities. It's awesome. I mean, quite frankly, it's a little humbling when I look at some of the folks that that have arrived. We have an SIV ambassador in Texas that arrived, has now got his JD from Texas A&M. Has an incredible life, and I'm like, oh shit, like he's more successful than me, and I grew up here. And so it really is. It's amazing. You have some of the most dutiful and hardworking people that just want more for their family, more for their kids, and so they come in and they just make incredible benefits to their community, and just do all sorts of amazing things. I think on average every Afghan owns like 3 businesses. They're all entrepreneurs. I don't know how they all do it. And so we have seen just incredible stuff. Now that said, since you talked about No One Left Behind and some of the things we're doing, we do have a mentorship program, and we're always keen for folks to join. And it's a great way to get your hands, you get your hands around a recently arrived Afghan SIV to help them kind of navigate, economic or to navigate employment here in the U.S. because they come with all sorts of skills. But look, if it's your first time applying for a job in the U.S., where do you go to look for a job? How do you craft a resume that works in an American context? And so, we're always looking for mentors that want to help Afghans and want to help them find, their first job in the U.S. and find a good job that's going to set them on the pathway to, long-term economic mobility and success.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Andy, thank you. I feel like there's a lot that is unknown, but I feel a lot better now, and I'm sure that people who are listening to this also feel a little bit better now. So
that makes me feel good because I thought this was maybe my most unhinged one yet. I don't know that there was any kind of flow here, but Beth, one of these days I demand it. Can you have me back when we're not in crisis mode?
Yeah, that would be awesome. You know what? And then you can talk to me about it's Ahmadi, right? Is your interpreter? Yeah, you can tell me the Ahmadi story one day when things settle down. I would love that. That'd be amazing. It'll happen one day. One day.
Inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah, for sure. Well, thank you for coming on, and everybody, if you have questions, send them to the Afghanistan Project podcast at gmail.com. Send your stories. If you're an Afghan and you want your story read on the podcast, I always want to include Afghan stories, and I almost had one for today, but it did not turn out, so that's okay. I'm going to be telling a lot of Afghan stories in a Substack episode coming up, article. It's all good. Our brains are just a little scattered, but thank you so much, Andy. Seriously, thank you. And thank you to everybody who listened. Tashakor, and hope to see you again soon with better news.